This week we're going to continue with using graphite techniques, and our subject is a close-up of an animal with fur or feathers, or like a lizard with scales. So we're going to focus on texture and light and shadow. I have this picture that I took back in Massachusetts of a neighborhood cat that came in on a snowy day and just kind of hung out at my son's place. And I got a couple nice pictures of it, and I like the contrast between the dark and the snow, the dark face and the snow, and nice sunlight on it. So I did a sketch here with gesture drawing and trying to work out the proportion and so on a piece of newsprint, and then transferred it. And then after looking at it, I realized there was still a lot of fixing I had to do. But luckily that graphite transfer paper erases nicely. So when you're looking at the face of an animal, if it's front face, you want to be careful about looking at the way the eyes and the nose are lined up. So I looked at the angle of the eyes here and tried to reproduce that same angle of how they're lined up. Also pay a lot of attention to negative space, how much space is between the eyes. And then on something like a mammal facing forward, like this cat, the nose line is going to be at right angles to the eyes. So if the face is tilting a little bit, the eyes are lined up on that tilt, and then the nose will be at right angles. And then the mouth will pretty much be at right angles, and the ears at the same parallel angle. Another thing to watch for is plumb lines. So on this, where are the feet? If you dropped a plumb line, like what carpenters would use, from the middle of the nose, it hits the feet. So you want to kind of check that, and then check angles. Use a pencil as an angle finder to recreate that same angle of the leg and so on. So here's my plumb line. It's coming right down to the feet. Also, really look if you're doing a body, and you can also just zoom in on a face if you want. If you're doing the body, look for negative spaces and negative shapes. Relationships are really important. How big is something compared to something else? Where does this line hit? Well, it hits right on the ear, that part of the ear. And what's the angle that's coming down? So anyway, I've gotten it transferred and fixed and drawn in. It's still kind of rough. So as I mentioned last week with my bells, I want to erase a lot of those lines so that I just have some basic shapes, and I have kind of a ghost image of where I'm going to go. And again, I'm going to just start off with a base coat of a gray using a tissue or a tortillon or blending stump, and you can use this happens to be a 6B graphite stick, and I can use a little place right here where it's almost like a palette, and then this is my paintbrush. So I'm getting graphite on this, and I'm doing an overall coat of graphite. And the nice thing is then you can erase out the highlights. And then, like I mentioned last week, it's fun to use the powdered graphite if you have it. And let me know if anybody needs some, because I still have a bunch, and I can sell that. You just would have to make your way over to the house, and we could meet here outdoors or whatever. So I've got a lot of graphite on here, and I'm gonna do an overall, trying to stay somewhat in the lines, but you can also erase out if you go over the lines. You can clean up those edges. And even though there is a highlight here right along the edge there's a wonderful rim lighting, I'm still going to fill that in and then erase it out later. Since there is a lot of strong highlight here. I want to put in the sidewalk or this driveway here. I'm not sure what it is. Yeah, it was the walkway out front. And then there's wonderful cast shadows being cast by, I think, this bush right here. That's the only thing I could figure out. I can't really remember. It's almost 2 years ago now. And then a wonderful strong cast shadow there. So I'm giving everything kind of a mid-value coating. And I want to still use my value scale, which I don't know where it is at the moment, but that little black and white value scale that shows all of the values, and you can check values. Let me see if I can find it here. You know, I always think I'm so organized. Give me a second. Okay, sorry about that. And it's really nice to have this to check. So on this, the darkest part of the shadow of the cat, and she's kind of or he is kind of a gray, it's almost a number 10 black. And then you think, well, snow, but really it's in shadow. So if you squint your eyes, it's more of that gray. So, and then this area down here, this looks like maybe a number 9. So that will really show off that light edge if I get really dark over there. And then this is probably a number 10 right here. So I've got some mid-value in there, and I haven't even thought about the fur or anything yet, and that will come later. So now I want to go in with a nice dark. And remember, last week I talked about having something to protect your hand as you're working from smearing. So I have a little piece of scrap paper that I'm going to put under my hand here, and I'm going to start looking at, and I've got my iPad here that's going to help me get in a little bit closer. And I'm using a 6B woodless graphite. And I'm trying to go back and forth and create a fairly smooth value, but it really helps to have that blender or a tissue. So I'm looking here at this dark value as I'm starting to fill that in. And I can just use a 6B, this happens to be a 6B pencil, that's another way to do it, or a graphite stick. I could go in with my graphite stick, and because it's broader, it will fill it in faster. And I've actually drawn in some of those values like a paint by number. So if you see this light here and this dark here, you can actually draw a hard edge to guide you. You won't color it in as a hard edge. So I'm smoothing it out and blending. Almost like if you were using watercolor, you would sort of soften the edge with your brush. And then this becomes a drawing tool also if I saturate it with graphite. This is an 8B, so it's pretty dark. So right now I'm not really focusing on texture. Texture is like the last thing. You want to get your shapes and your value shapes in. What are the broad value shapes? Now when I get right here, I can start to indicate a little bit of that texture of the fur. I'm going to get my eraser stick and erase out some of that where I went over the edge. And I see on the half of the nose, it's in highlight. So right now, I'm not thinking eyes, nose, mouth as much as what is the shape of that value. And how dark is it? And I'm kind of roughing in. This is my eraser stick. It starts to get a little bit dirty, so I can clean it off. Okay, so now and then I see some light here. So this little eraser stick becomes a drawing tool. It's not just for fixing, it really isn't for fixing mistakes at all. It's for drawing. And same with the kneaded eraser. I'm going to lift out, like vacuum up some of that value, lift it up a little bit. And I'll go in with a sharpened, nice sharpened, this is an 8B. It could be really a 6B, but. And I'm going to get some of these little dots where the whiskers grow out of. Now, how am I going to show these white whiskers on a dark surface? I can use my electric eraser or my stick eraser. Now, let's just take a minute, and I'm not going to go too much more because I think you're kind of getting the idea of where I'm going with this. But I'm going to show some fur texture now. So I'm going to take my stick eraser, or you can use a Ticonderoga regular pink eraser on the end of the eraser and start, actually I need to do a little more value here. So I see a little highlight on this side here. I'm going to lift that out. And I'm going to lift out this. And go in and darken. So I'm still looking for darks and lights. And I'd need to take my time and really smooth this out later, but I don't want to take too much of your time for that. Okay, so now I'm going to go in and start to look at some of that fur right there and start to indicate a little bit of texture. And over here on the highlight side over here, I'm going to indicate a little bit of texture in here. And here's my a kneaded eraser. I'm going to go in and lift a little bit more here. There's a little rim light on there. So if I'm looking at this right here and I want to start to show that really dark, it'll probably be darker, but that gives me an opportunity to show that little bit of rim lighting going on there. So it's dark against light, light against dark, and that's a nice little rim light. And the same thing if I go in and I darken right here, where that snow is bank is casting a little shadow here. And I can go in and start to show some texture here, some fur, and get this nice little bit of rim lighting here. Blending, blending. Now I want to go in and show some fur. So we're getting not only the highlight, but the texture of the fur. So two things going on here. Now, and remember that snow had a little bit of value there too. So that'll give me an opportunity to get that rim light. If I bring the snow right up to her back. So I keep trying to figure out dark against light, light against dark, and don't let the name of something tell you what it is. Oh, this is snow, so it's going to be white, or this is a African-American person, so they're going to have really black skin, whereas the light hitting it might, or a white person is going to have really white skin. But that isn't always the case. Depending on how the light is hitting, you get some big variations, and don't let your left brain say the word snow or pine tree or black cat and tell you what you're really seeing there. And one more thing I want to show you before we quit here is, and I keep seeing more things, I could go on forever here. I see this real dark area that's defining the back, the bottom of the tail, but it's also defining the back of the foot, or the leg, excuse me. And I'm working really fast. I would say work slower. You know, I'm trying to do this on a video, so I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I would take it a little bit slower than what I'm doing. Try and do it a little neater and more carefully. I'm seeing some wonderful little lights there. So I'm going to go in with the electric eraser, and if I'm careful, I can get some whiskers there. Now on this side, the whiskers could read black, and they are. It's hard to see, but on this photograph, it's dark. They're dark on this side, so it's dark against light and light against dark. So you can have it work for you. Now, I did do most of the texture by erasing out, but you can also, of course, color in the texture. So here I am taking a dark pencil and beginning to show the way the fur is growing with a dark pencil. So lifting out lights and coloring in darks. Okay, so I don't know how the light is hitting on this graphite, but graphite gets a little shiny. So I hope that that gives you something to go on and have fun with this. And you can zoom in on a face if you want. Be sure and look at the Google Classroom with all the examples and the Pinterest pages where they do lots of examples of animals. Okay, see you this week.